911 Parents Edition. And today we have two amazing parents that are going to share their stories with us about DAEP policies that are affecting their children. And DAEP is Discipline Alternative Education Placement. If you haven't heard of it, you need to know about it. It is not a good thing. It is not something that is productive for our children. And as you're going to learn, really causes a lot of problems. And so first I want to welcome John Campbell. And John is from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. John, tell us your short story on what's happened with your family and DAEP.
Will do, Melissa. So for clarification and starters, my child has never set foot in a DAEP facility and never will. We actually unenrolled him after the placement notification, specifically to protect him from, let's say, the inappropriate dangers that exist in that environment. So it's hard to roll everything up that happened in the last year in a 3-minute elevator speech, but I think I'm getting better and better at it. About this time last year, maybe a month ago, or a month before last year. Wait, a year from this December just passed. There we go. Sorry. It gets a little jumbled. My son actually reported a case of discrimination based on race and sex at his school, which, unbeknownst to us, was a very big deal in their administration. Shortly after he did that, an anonymous tip was made in the school's tip line called Stop It Solutions. And that tip was used by an administrator in the same school to really act as detective, judge, jury, and executioner, completely unchecked by any rational person in the district, to place our son with zero disciplinary record in DAP for a purported offense that happened outside of school grounds, out of school hours, in a private forum on the internet run by children. The idea that the school could reach that far outside of their bounds and then unilaterally act to punish a child for speaking out is completely inexcusable. My wife and I were shocked, and my wife is a 20-year education veteran. My wife and I were shocked to find out that our child had no rights and no expectation of any rights in the public school system at all, and that we had no opportunity for recourse. We went through the school's process. We went to the TEA. We went to the Office of Civil Rights. We went to the Dallas District Court. We spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And the end result is that tomorrow, my 17-year-old child, who is the victim of what we think is retaliation by a school official, will take his GED and enter into community college. And once he does that, we will decide how we can get his permanent record from this expunged.
Wow, that's just incredible, John. I'm so sorry. Linnea, you have a similar yet very different story. Can you share with us what's happened to your family as it's related to DAP? You are also in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, correct?
Oh no. I think you're muted, Linnea.
Uh,
Or Melissa, you might have to unmute her.
Yeah, I did, but it's still not. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
yes, so my daughter's story happened about a year ago. She was an honor roll student, had no record of any prior anything. She was a good student, well liked by her teachers. She decided one day to leave campus with a group of friends and bring back a Truly and drink it in the bathroom. Was not caught that day. It was another student. One of the students in the bathroom at the time took a selfie and posted it on social media. And then another student had pointed it out to a teacher. So come to find out, they had isolated who by video camera, what students had been in the bathroom, and who had been there. But but never really saw her drink alcohol, found it on her possession, nothing like that, but called her in for questioning, and she admitted guilt. This was all unbeknownst to me. This was behind closed doors. By the time I was called by the school AP, she was already convicted. The crime, she was guilty as charged, and the process had begun. So we have a child who's not had a prior record, but she's going to get the book thrown at her. I was called, told into, I asked what had transpired. They said she had admitted guilt, and I needed to go down to the school and talk to them about her placement in the DA, well, what the consequences were. And so she had the in-school suspension. And then when I got there, within the 3 days, and at this time, I have no idea what this process entails. But when I get there, I'm told she will be placed in the DAEP by the AP. And the way they describe it, it's some kind of fairy tale land where kids go in and they get all the help they need socially, psychologically. They're going to confront their, whatever it is they did wrong. It's going to be a time where they can reflect on that and become better people. And it's all going to work out really well. And they actually come out better on the other side of this than when they go in. Well, that's absolutely false. That is a lie. She went in a good person. And not that she's not still a good person, but she came out having been subjected to all sorts of violators, sexual offenders, children that had brought guns to school, drug dealers. It's prison school is what it is. So my daughter she's not that kind of kid. She didn't know that all those things. Well, now she's basically seen the other side and a dark side of way more high risk and bigger offenders. The fact that I was clueless. I really didn't know what we were getting into. So while she was in there were incidences as well. She was asked to sign a stay away order from another girl. So come to find out, I guess one girl had reported the group or having had the alcohol on campus and the whole social media thing. Well, I guess another girl had been caught vaping, but my daughter, I guess, was the one that had said she was vaping in the bathroom. Well, that girl's mother decided that my daughter needed what's kind of it's a restraining order of sorts in there. So I got a call on that after the fact, after my daughter signed it. And the first thing I asked the principal was, did the girl sign one for my daughter? So was my daughter protected on the other side of this? And she said, no. This is a one-way street, basically. So my daughter was going to be on check and held accountable for her actions, but the other child is not going to have that same standard. So different standards for different kids. And that's the way this process works. My daughter not having had an offense prior, to me, is it's ludicrous to give her 45 school days, and on good behavior, she could cut that down to 30 days. Now, if they tell you on good behavior, that sounds like prison to me. So for every day she's good, she gets a half day off her sentencing, and it's a sentence. It's not a joke. And so, she ended up in not a good place. She met a drug dealer. She ended up taking Xanax to cope with this, unbeknownst to me. And that's what happens in there. These kids, they get to a degree of anxiety and upset. And having been an honor roll student, and now her grades are slipping, she came out with horrible grades.
Mhm.
And they lied to me. They said, "Oh, don't worry. Her grades, she's going to have better grades, actually." Everything is a false narrative when it comes to this DAEP. So that's the story of my daughter. I do have another story with my son. And I don't know if you want me to wait on that, Melissa, or go into the next.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the similarities between your two cases, especially as it relates to the fact that, I mean, I heard several things. Linnea, you mentioned that things were happening without your knowledge. They were having your daughter sign things,
Mhm.
agreeing to do things without your knowledge. They're interviewing your daughter about what happened with the Truly without you present. Um, and John, did you have similar situations where they were interacting with your son prior to them wanting to put them in DAP without you present? I think you mentioned that I know he
There's
met with the AP, but
there's actually a lot of similarities between our between the process that we faced in Capel and the process that Linnea is describing in Frisco. Um, chief among them, I don't want to say that they outright lie, but I think that there are a lot of them that don't understand the ramifications of their actions. So, for instance, Linnea, when they tell you, oh, everything's going to be wonderful in DAP, it's actually full of unicorns and rainbows. Um, the idea that they can protect your honor student with no record whatsoever from a small mistake that she wasn't even caught in the act for, so it's not even really verified, that they can protect her from that decision by putting her in a facility full of drug dealers and people that brought guns to school or sexual offenders is patently absurd.
Mhm.
So, what I see in both stories is that the intermediary steps which should be used to correct a child's behavior weren't even considered. So, I mean, in my child's case, we're talking about school overreach with social media, where they went and they found something that was off school time, off school property, didn't involve anybody from the school. And actually, if we're correct that an administrator did it, they had to pose as a child to infiltrate a social media circle in order to get this evidence. And yours isn't very different, except that in yours, a student put this tip in. And what it sounds like to me is some student who probably has an axe to grind with your daughter
Mhm.
put together a little social media post and then brought it to a campus behavior coordinator who, quite frankly, campus behavior coordinators are trained to look for threats, and surprise, they find them no matter what. And then they're given carte blanche to act unilaterally. What happened to your daughter is completely inexcusable and really doesn't serve her or the district, or really it doesn't serve anybody except for the tipster that was looking to get your daughter in trouble. That
Mhm.
person succeeded in hurting your daughter, and the
Mhm.
school district, either through malfeasance or, outright malicious intent, facilitated that damage.
Mhm. Mhm.
Sorry, I think I went a little too farther than you wanted there, Melissa.
No, no, you're absolutely right, John. It's
it,
no holds bar, it's the Wild West
Yeah.
behind those closed doors. When you drop your child off, you have no idea if you're going to get a call and what's transpired before you got that call. Now, that's not the end of my daughter's story either, because this year there was another incident, and a child had taken some kind of a vape. She had vaped something in a bathroom and collapsed. And I was called up by the principal and told that my daughter, they were thinking that my daughter had something to do with that.
Hmm.
And I said, and just shockingly, I just said, "Is this child okay? And what transpired?" She said that they were going to get to the bottom of it, And come to find out, to make a long story short, my daughter was not involved in that. My daughter exonerated herself, had to go down there and actually went and spoke to the principal in person within a few days of the incident. Or I think the next day, my daughter had found out that day that it wasn't her, it was another student. And come to find out, the student wasn't even on this campus.
Hmm.
So I asked for answers as to why, how, video recordings. How did you come to this conclusion that you could go to my daughter's statistics class in front of everybody and humiliate her? The principal marched over there, humiliated my daughter, took her out of the class, and told her to take her stuff, that she was coming with her, and have the whole school think that my daughter had done something to harm somebody.
Mhm.
Because the popular opinion and the gossip and the social media and everything else, John, had my daughter as guilty before she could prove herself innocent.
Yep.
I wrote
And
letters to the principal. I asked for answers. I asked for video footage. Where did you come to the conclusion that my daughter had been involved in this incident? And I got nothing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's almost as if local school districts have become entirely populated by the same unaccountable bureaucrats that run the TEA. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the reason they can do that and they don't provide anything to you is because they're not liable for anything that happens in the school. You have no recourse, and
Mm-hmm.
they know it.
Yeah, and specifically, the law says that decisions of the school board, which effectively end up being the school district decisions because they always rubber stamp them,
Mm-hmm.
that they're not appealable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can't, in theory, you can't take it to the courts. The courts will say, sorry, lack of jurisdiction. You can't take it to the TEA. Sorry, lack of jurisdiction. And one of the things that Texas Ed 911 is working with legislators on is fixing that. The DAP system itself needs fixed, but right now we're focused on making sure that something like this that has happened to your children, Linnea, and to John, to your son, that could have happened had you not stepped in and made sure he didn't go. It should never happen. And parents should not be in a situation where they're helpless to help their children. They should never be in a situation where the school districts can lie about evidence, fabricate evidence, choose to take one kid's side over another kid's side without evidence. That should never happen, and it should never happen without oversight. And
Yeah.
Linnea, as you're describing your daughter's experience there, you talked about prison, you talked about things that sounded like parole, like you could get out for good behavior.
Mm-hmm.
John, you made a comment about how putting Linnea's daughter in DAP did nothing to help her make a better decision next time.
Just
Um,
the opposite. It turns out that it
exactly.
harmed her, which you'd expect.
Yeah. And Linnea, I've talked to you before, and I remember you saying, I know my daughter made a mistake. I wasn't saying that there shouldn't be punishment or a consequence, but what happened was unacceptable. And I made mistakes when I was a child. We all made mistakes when we were a child. We are children, and that's
Mhm.
why we have parents to step in and protect us and to guide us. And the school has basically decided that they're the parent, that they're going to determine what the level of punishment is, and matter of fact, how they're going to determine the crime,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's beyond unacceptable. I know,
I think,
John. Oh, go ahead, John.
I think there are two main issues that to touch on, and one is the inappropriateness. But forget about the how you get to a DAEP placement. We'll get to that next. But the inappropriateness of applying something like a DAEP placement to a child that is not uh, really a danger to themselves or others, or who's not, I mean, even impeding the educational environment, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, DAP is for children that, I mean, if you're going to have it for children that bring guns to school, that are sexual offenders, that bring drugs to school, it can't be the first disciplinary step when an otherwise good child steps out of line. I mean, Linnea, your story should have been a 3-day suspension. You know, they could have come to you and said, your daughter drank alcohol on campus. As a result, we want her to stay home and think about what she's done, and we want you to stay home and watch her.
Mhm.
And
Right.
there would be ostensibly a discussion between the two of you where you would say, I can't take another 5 days off of work, so you don't do this again.
Mhm.
You know, which is the parent's place.
Mhm.
Um, the idea that they would, so the first part is that it's inappropriate and that they are ignoring all of the steps that lead up to it. And like Lene, you said before when we were talking, they go from 0 to 1,000, and
Mhm.
there's no way to stop it. The
Mhm.
other problem with that scenario is that they're having one person do it relatively unchecked. And, you know, in my experience talking with campus behavior coordinators, and I know quite a few of them actually, not for disciplinary records, my wife works in a school district for 20 years. So a lot of these people are our friends,
Mhm.
but they are currently in a position with the Texas Education Code where they need to determine the law, and they're bad at it. I
Mhm.
mean, they don't understand the law. They don't understand. I mean, in my case, we have a police report that exonerates my child. It says that the allegations against him are unfounded. I mean, the police, and you don't see unfounded very often. You know, the police are arguably the experts on the law. We give this to a campus behavior coordinator, and they completely ignore it. They
Mhm.
didn't even cite it in any of the paperwork that they had read it at all, you know, because they were on this one track of this is what we're going to do. And the campus behavior coordinator's job is to put kids in DAEP. They go to fulfill that job, and the district lets them do it unchecked because it's their job. We've trained them to make criminals out of children, and it's a complete travesty.
I have another story also. My son got into trouble this year, and he was vaping an over-the-counter vape, which is easy for kids to access right now. Uh,
Nicotine, oh yeah,
it's a Delta 8 or an 8.
oh yeah,
So he
which
had,
is not illegal.
and that's what he
Yeah,
said. He goes, Mom, it's not illegal, but he was underage, so that makes it illegal for him. But
yeah, I guess that's true.
that's a whole nother story. But I was told by the AP that it was under his sole discretion to make the decision of the placement of DAEP.
Mhm.
And I said, here we have another kid, an honor roll student. Here we go again. He's honor roll, great grades. I mean, he's just very, very bright. And I said, I refuse to put him in DAEP. I already know the history of this place. I won't do it again. And he said, well, you have another option. You have other options. Um, you can fight it through the, and that's through the system. So the people that you fight it with are
Are the same people.
school district. That's going to be
Yeah.
board members, and that's futile. I told Melissa that doesn't even make any sense to me. And
Mhm.
then he said, "Well, your other option is to pull him out." And I said, "You know what? I'm not going to put my son into the same situation predicament that my daughter was in, and have him go in a downward spiral. He's never had a record, nothing done wrong before."
Mhm.
And I refuse it. I even said I would negotiate a lower time in that system, maybe 10 school days, 2 weeks in there. I would be okay. But he's got, calculus, all sorts of classes. There's no teacher in there that's going to teach him calculus. I guarantee you that, because those teachers in the DAEP, they say that they're certified. I don't believe it for a minute. So so I pulled him out. He's online now. He's out.
Yep.
Yeah.
That
And
was
you know,
that's
that's,
another commonality in our stories for sure.
Mhm.
yeah. And I know we're going to take a short break here in a second, and we'll be right back.